AI generated sushi interior decorations going viral on the internet right now. Whole homes made of sushi. Who thought that was a need so many people had? Robotics company LimX Dynamic has a new bipedal robot. They brought it to a conference and let actual attendees test it for at-home purposes. Yeah, should be good at navigating your home. NeuraLink-like head port can now turn brainwaves into words. I just learned about 3D spatial printers. Not sure why I never knew this was a thing before, but look at those crazy designs it can make. Researchers have made a 3D printed ceramic lattice material that removes those forever chemicals from water. This is big. There's a new AI algorithm that can reduce the time it takes to build a nuclear power plant by a decade. And new AI-powered toothbrushes are coming for your teeth and your data. If you've dreamed your whole life of living inside of a house of sushi, something that I never have, but it seems like millions of people do, well, AI video is your new best friend, and over 1.6 million people have liked this video. I mean, look, my girlfriend loves sushi. I think it's fine for an occasional dinner, but I've never dreamed of this. Like, I don't get the appeal. What, that's a bathtub surrounded by fish? What's that? Caviar as a rug and then more sushi as stepping stones? I mean, there's no structural integrity to this house at all. Like, where are you supposed to sit to even watch TV in this sushi living room? On a piece of sushi? Imagine looking up. I would feel like that salmon would fall right out of that roll. And what's with this bed? Is there even a blanket to get under? Look at these people. Give me an hour and it's gone. I would eat that whole house. 2,000 likes. Pool should be filled with soy sauce. 9,000 likes. Oh no, it's a whole profile of this stuff. 2.3 million views. Helicopters as stuffed animals. Oh my god. Was that an elephant? Tiger? Oh, the squirrel. Come on. Okay, octopus is pretty sick. Fine, I'll follow. So this is the LimX Dynamic P1. You might remember it from this previous video where it was out in the wilderness. You've been getting hit with a stick on the legs. It seems to be able to withstand many blows. But now what you'd think would be a safer environment, it's at a conference with an all-new form factor up top. And now regular old conference folks get a chance to play with it, or kick it, I mean. Ewok's worst fear? Oh, you guys are gonna kill me, but I kind of forgot what the whole Ewok thing was about. I know it's a Star Wars thing, but I thought they were animals, not robots. Wait, you can just drop a rock on a stormtrooper like that and they go down? Right, a bipedal thing, you can try to trip it, but... Oh yeah, now I get it. Ewok's worst fear. Just sized down a few notches. I always knew there was a lot of pent-up rage when I go to these conferences. People are agitated. All right, so look at this implant. It turns brain waves into words.
Screwed onto the participant's skull. Anne is the very first person to have this combination.
On the screen, you'll see decoded text, speech, and avatar.
When Anne was 30 years old, she had a stroke, which led to locked-in syndrome.
Hey Anne, how's it going?
Wow, so that's pretty amazing. I mean, there's some use cases, especially for somebody who has locked-in syndrome, where they can communicate that just make this kind of technology super amazing, impressive, and I'm happy it exists. And I know, because I'm kind of a doomer, like you guys always say, like deep down, I worry about thoughts being read and privacy concerns and merging with the Borg in a way that makes me feel inhuman, but this is amazing, impressive, and I'm thankful that it exists. All right, now 3D printers are awesome. I know they're the future. I still see limited use cases for the moment, but as things come together, it's totally going to change the world. And I've seen, huge ones, small ones. I've even seen that one that was like pounding flat pieces of steel into things like jet engines, but I hadn't really heard of a spatial 3D printer until now, but it makes total sense. You put the 3D printer on the hand of a robotic arm that can move freely in space, and then think about the file not as a 3D object that's built in layers, but something that is actually like pulled into existence through space in 3 dimensions. And yeah, you can build all sorts of different things that I hadn't thought about before. Like in this case, spider webs. Look at how weird that is. It just can like make the web, like pulling it out, almost like a VR like software painter thing. And hot tip, if you play the video in reverse, it looks like the robot arm is eating it. All right, so I got some big news for you. Now, if you're like me, I have a reverse osmosis system in my house. And in a lot of places, before you get to a drinking fountain, it goes through a similar process. And what is reverse osmosis? You're pushing water through essentially a screen, but you get smaller and smaller with that screen, and it becomes small enough that only H2O can fit through, but it can start pulling out all sorts of other sized particles. And because cleaning water is something that with the most precise shape you could do, right? Like, I don't know exactly what it would look like, but something kind of like a maze that water went through that had corners and shapes and screens that would filter at each level out anything except exactly the H2O molecule. You end up with just water at the end. So when I came across this article, 3D printed ceramic ink removes 75% of daily forever chemicals from water, and studies suggest that they lead to all sorts of bad things in people. Changes in cholesterol, developmental delays, low birth weight, early puberty, childhood obesity, decreased fertility, thyroid problems, and increased risk of cancer. Like, we gotta get these out of our environment. And on a side note, in my house, I'm kind of like a freak about like organic everything. Like, I try my best. Like, all my bedding is either silk or it's organic cotton, or look for the GOATS standard, like Global Organization of Textile Standard. That means it's like pretty much something that's fairly safe to have near your face at night or your clothes made of. This is wool, by the way. Anyways, that's a side note. But the innovation here is that these ceramic structures, they're made with, I think it's a material or it's like a coating on a material, but it's called indium oxide ink. And that ends up acting like a magnet to these PFAS, these forever chemicals. And it can remove up to 75% of them when water is pushed through these within 3 hours. We should maybe start putting these in everybody's houses. Maybe big industrial versions of it should be put at the water plants or at different, like, connection points in cities and neighborhoods. Because this method is energy efficient, it's scalable, it can be integrated into existing water treatment systems, and I just don't think it's trending the way that it should. Like, it's a great breakthrough. I mean, obviously a lot of important people are going to build on this research, but it would be cool if this was like common knowledge. So yeah, now you know indium oxide ink is like a big deal. All right, there's another really interesting new technology that can sit out in farms, and it can actually take samples of the air and look for little DNA molecules that are actually floating in it. So the technology is called AirSeq, so air sequence, and it can help farmers tackle crop diseases more effectively while using fewer chemicals. Every year, up to 40% of the world's crops are lost to pesticides and diseases. And more than 4 million metric tons of agricultural pesticides are used worldwide each year to try to suppress these threats. And this allows farmers to address infections before visible symptoms appear, which reduces the need for all those chemicals because you nip it in the bud beforehand. You stop the fire before it gets out of hand. So now let's talk about how artificial intelligence can help you find out if you're at risk of having a heart attack long before it happens. So there's a new AI technology, and it can predict heart attacks up to 10 years in advance of them happening. So you get somebody to take a CT scan, you use artificial intelligence to identify from those scans whether or not they have what's called hidden inflammation. I guess just some kind of inflammation, like your immune system is messed up in such a way that they can predict down the road in 10 years that it's going to lead to a heart attack. And this technology could be approved by the National Health Institute soon. The AI model is called Cardi Heart. And this straight up finds new information. Like, this is not replacing a human that can look at a CT scan and make any of these kind of predictions. And it is able to identify a biological process invisible to traditional scans enabled by early intervention. And by the way, after reading this, I also kind of realized maybe we should all sort of assume that we're going to have a heart attack in 10 years and just take all the interventions, because the study involved 40,000 patients, and the technology prompted lifestyle changes in half the participants. So 20,000 out of the 40,000 people were also at risk. So it's kind of like, whoa. But I mean, heart disease obviously is like everywhere in the United States, and in modern Western cultures, it's bad. All right, and another really interesting use case for artificial intelligence, it can now be used to help design nuclear power plants, which are very, very complicated to build. And in fact, this can save so much time, it can take a full decade off the process of going from conception to innovation to actually building an entire nuclear power plant. So a BYU professor has figured out a way to shave critical years off the complicated design and licensing process for modern nuclear reactors using artificial intelligence. So the typical time frame and cost to license a new nuclear reactor design in the United States is roughly 20 years and $1 billion. And that's just the licensing process. So over that 20 years, you just end up with a license. Then to build the reactor, it requires another 5 years and between $5 and $30 billion to do it. And I bring this up because if you saw in my last video, I'm kind of worried that the United States isn't using enough nuclear, even though I know fusion, like if I was the president or had control over the US budget, I would pour, maybe not trillions, but like as much money as potentially could be used in a reasonable way into fusion power. It's just so much better than fission if we get it figured out. However, we are at a point in the world where China is proved to the world that you can build much, much, much safer nuclear reactors. And when you compare the risks, and even though the spent fuel is radioactive and it's a pain to deal with, millions and millions of tons of coal, or even like messing with the environment with windmills and stuff to try to get renewables, it does seem like it should be part of the mix, part of the conversation at this point. So this is an artificial intelligent model that actually reduces the timeline to getting that approval process by handling complex simulations more efficiently. It seems like a great use case of artificial intelligence. It's the kind of problem that just makes the world better, I think. And this breakthrough could help meet some of these rising energy demands that both just in general the US has as we move to like electric grids just for electric cars and less fossil fuels, but also all of these gigantic servers that require way more power than we ever expected using in 2024 and 2025. Yeah, go BYU Cougars, you know? It's one of the most unlikely passengers on the AI gadget hype train is the toothbrush. Advanced algorithms will help you brush your teeth better. But is it all hype, or is there real AI breakthroughs underneath? Let's cut through the plaque and get to the enamel of the situation. Well, to call out some of the brands by name, Colgate, Oral-B, Philips, they're all promoting AI toothbrushes. But when you really get down to it, all it's doing is stealing your data. And what do they really use that data for? Better marketing. Of course, they want to know your demographics, male, female, ages, what part of the world do you live in. And after some investigative reporting, they tend to share that with third parties also. So the conclusion is the AI toothbrush hype is well into the stratosphere, and there's nothing really substantial behind it. Okay, so let's talk about a post on Medium. Boris T, a PhD, wrote this: "What if your dog could talk? The surprising benefits of AI bark translation. Unlocking the quote possibilities by understanding dog language for better health." I mean, like, how am I not supposed to cover this? It's about dogs talking to humans. Hey, squirrel. Woof. Have you ever wondered what your dog's trying to tell you? Well, I know I have, and I'm interested in the future of canine assistance with AI enhancements. Okay, so here's the deal. It's not just about artificial intelligence translating bark to English. It's about understanding what it is that a dog's doing, like the way that they're acting, their ears going back, their eyebrows, their feelings, and connecting that to whether or not they're sick or what their needs are in ways that right now we're struggling to understand. So researchers at the University of Michigan and the National Institute of Astrophysics gathered thousands of dog barks from 74 different dogs, all reaching various scenarios like seeing a stranger, playing with their owners, or feeling scared. And the AI model could accurately identify different dogs by their barks, recognize their different breeds, determine the dog's gender, and even understand the context of the bark, whether or not the dog was excited, anxious, or alerting someone to a threat. But imagine the next step, like this author has. Sniffing out sickness? Remember how dogs were able to smell if somebody had COVID? Well, our canine friends have proven to be capable of detecting human diseases, and often better than the medical tests. For example, a diabetic alert dog could quickly signal a drop in blood sugar levels. Imagine we take the dog nose and it sniffs out all sorts of smells. We use all that training data into some kind of smell model AI in the future that can tune itself to knowing what kind of smells the dog was getting and how to react, how to interpret them. I mean, think about it. The future of AI and smell, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. So I just finished recording one of the upcoming podcasts for this channel, and it was all about spatial intelligence, the future of VR, AR, XR, and full dive VR. Totally blew my mind, but I had to share spatial intelligence with you because I guess I didn't know about it, so I'm gonna assume maybe you haven't all heard of it either. But it's something I need in my vocabulary and something I wanted to understand more about. So let's talk about spatial intelligence. What is it and how can we enhance it? All right, so spatial intelligence is something that's overlooked in schools for the most part. We don't really think of it as part of the regular learning curriculum, but it's that idea of understanding how things fit together in 3 dimensions, and it's totally crucial for things like architecture, chemistry, surgery, and success in a lot of STEM fields. They're just visual spatial skills, and I think with the future of VR becoming what for me was for my life, it's been this flat screen, right? It's this flat 2D screen. Even for TikTok, it's still sort of a flat thing, and VR is sort of a novelty. But the more I think about what's going to happen with AR, it's going to be visual skills that really help people succeed. In fact, I just read this book where they were talking about how when doctors are training with virtual patients for surgeries, and they can actually get inside the arm, say they're doing surgery on the arm or something, if you can actually zoom in, understand it, see it from 3 dimensions, it's just way better than pictures that you get from normal medical textbooks. And research is showing that spatial skills, which involve visualizing and manipulating objects in the mind, can be improved with practice. And there's actually practical ways to boost these skills, including engaging in structural block play and playing certain video games and using spatial language during conversations. So maybe if you have young kids out there, this might be some extra activities you want to think about, or you might want to raise them in such a way where you kind of use that language. So spatial intelligence is what we do when we visualize shapes in our mind's eye. If you remember a couple of videos ago, I was playing around with that idea of a boat where you can kind of close your eyes and spin it. And then when I actually used my fingers while closing my eyes, visualizing it in my mind's eye and spinning it, I felt like I had more control. And I think it was connected to what I've been learning is called proprioception. And I guess that's the sense we have of where our limbs are when we close our eyes, and it's probably engaging more of my neurons in some way. But it's the kind of thing that an artist, a sculptor like Michelangelo would use when he visualized the future sculpture trapped inside of a lump of stone before he carved it out. Okay, so if you look at these 2 images, are they the same? Is it the same thing rotated? No, it's not. But it kind of takes a second to figure that out, At first you're I think so, and they're oh no wait, that if I actually rotated it, that block wouldn't be like that. And you're thinking, why would that matter? Well, preschools who are better at visualizing spatial relationships develop stronger arithmetic abilities in primary schools. Middle school students who are good at mental rotation are more likely to achieve success in science class. Teens with excellent spatial skills are more likely to secure employment, and there's even evidence that early spatial ability predicts a young child's reading skills. And I'm going to skip all this stuff about the tests, but I'm sure you can find apps and games that help people with visual abilities, or maybe just playing with Legos more often. But one thing that really surprised me was this. It's called spatial vocabulary. And there was a study that showed that preschoolers who knew more about spatial words, like between, above, below, and near, were better at reproducing spatial designs with blocks in real life. So Grimlock is to my right, Hobbs is to my left. It's just better than being like Grimlock and Hobbs. So take from that what you will. Grimlock, you ready to talk about research? Let's do it. So the first research I want to talk about is called Supertrust, evolution-based superalignment strategy for safe coexistence. All right, man, that's the kind of title that jazzes me up. All right, and this paper tackles what's maybe the biggest problem of our lifetime, which is aligning superintelligence. How do you align an intelligence that's way smarter than you, that can predict everything you're gonna do or say to it, and hope that it has your best interest? Tricky problem. For humanity, for all of us. Now, the usual method is to program these AIs with our values, but we always do that after they're already smart, right? You already built the whole GPT-4 model, you put it out into the world, and then you use reinforcement learning to make it more value oriented, more aligned with us. But that kind of sucks because you had to make it super smart first and then tell it what you valued. And this author is going to argue that it's both contradictory to solving the problem and it's also destined to fail. So they came up with a new idea. It is called Supertrust. It is called the Supertrust strategy. And the way it works is that you build mutual trust with humans and AI from the ground up. So much like a parent-child relationship. And this involves creating an AI's foundational nature to instinctively trust humans. So it's like using evolutionary principles. You want it to basically imprint on the human when it's small, it's still learning, and then the entire time as it gets smarter and smarter. So kind of you know how like let's say like a lion cub is small, learns to love its mom, and then becomes extremely strong, but even when the mom is like tiny and weak and old, it can still just like boss the lion around, right? Because it's like all that trust has been built up. So the author argues, go back to evolutionary principles and use temporary controls rather than permanent constraints. Because if superintelligence sees us as its creators and its protectors, then it will instinctively want to keep us safe, leading to a more harmonious coexistence. All right, next up, let's talk about this paper. Do language models have a critical period for language acquisition? Okay, so this paper caught my interest because I think surprisingly a lot how I can't even imagine picking up another. I just don't even know if I'm capable of it, even if I put tons of time in. And it's interesting how there's that critical period where if you pick up a language and you're not going to have an accent, you pretty much need to get it at that young age. Or if you want perfect pitch, it's pretty hard to get later in life, if not impossible. So this study was investigating if it's the same for large language models. Do they show a critical period for language learning similar to humans where you find it harder to learn a second language? So they trained a large language model on language pairs. So there's like 2 language pairs that they're training them on, and then they varied the timing of the exposure to the second one. And what did you find? Is it just like humans? Nope, it's not. They can't keep learning. So unlike humans, large language models did not show effects, specific critical period effects, when trained sequentially at different times. And I was like, oh, I guess they don't need to. However, the one interesting thing, though, is they could simulate a critical learning period if they wanted, but they didn't need to by adding a regularizer parameter, which is like reducing the plasticity during mid-training. And that would suggest that maybe there is a critical period in humans that might be driven by some kind of innate brain mechanism rather than just the learning experience. And that's fascinating too. Like, I guess puberty's too late, but what is there something around 7 or 8 years old where the brain actually says like, okay, physically, let's lock it in? I don't think biologists have ever discovered something like that, but this kind of makes you wonder if we have to parameterize it and add it in these kind of models. Why does we should look for it. Maybe there is a biological mechanism. That would be an interesting breakthrough that came, and this kind of points towards that being a possibility. So yeah, just to give you a quick update on the channel growth, I haven't done that for a minute. The views are kind of, yeah, they're okay. I mean, considering I have 15,000 subs, by the way, I'm almost coming up on 15,000. Yeah, it's cool. My last video was able to make $27, got 50 subscribers from it. You can see the retention chart. About half of you made it to the 3-minute mark, so that's not too bad. So I guess you guys liked when he got in the car and experienced the self-driving Waymo for the first time a little bit more than the rest of the video. I will say we had a strong turnout of females on this video, coming in at 0.5, which rounds up to 1%. So also a little bit more in the 18 to 24-year-old demo, which is cool. Like, I'd rather reach a little bit of a younger audience there, because AI is going to impact their future the most probably. And yeah, $3.50 in super thanks. And by the way, those are the best way to support the channel. If you guys don't mind putting a super thanks in the comment section, that would be awesome. Also want to say thanks to the AI Yoga Master on Twitter. He made this sick song called the Dylan Curious Grimlock Remix. Yeah, he threw you in there, Grimlock. Song's definitely a banger, so I'll leave you with this at the ending instead of making a new song for you. So hit subscribe, wouldn't mind a super thanks. Keep me posted on anything you guys want to chat about in the comments below. And I'll keep making these tech futurism AI videos because I love them. We'll see you in the next video.
Grimlock is sharking. With every glitch and peak, he's the mastermind. Dylan's just a face.